This is common sense. This is reason. This is why human beings, as I said, everywhere, historically, you will find in every culture, there is this belief in the transcendent Creator. You see, the Quran says that in fact, the real problem with the human beings is not that they don't believe in God. Most human beings believe in God, and they believe that there is one God, meaning they believe that there is one Creator. But what they do is they actually give to the created things some of the powers or the knowledge that in fact only rightly belongs to God. So they attribute to the creation, they imagine that some things in the creation have powers that only God has. Or sometimes they also attribute to God some of the deficiencies and the shortcomings in the creation. And the reason they do this is because they speak about God without knowledge. They invent things because actually the truth is that what we can know about God through reason and common sense is in fact severely limited. Now some people, when they are faced with that limitation, they've come up with different ideas. If you look at the philosophical tradition and the Western philosophical tradition, okay, you have a group of people who lived and they were very influential in the last 200 years. They were called deists. Deists believed that there was a creator. They believed that it was extremely logical to believe that this universe had a creator. But they did not believe in a personal God. In other words, they didn't believe that God actually really cared about human beings. So this God created the universe, but about us, and the idea that we could have some sort of contact and relationship with this God, they considered that to be, they didn't believe that. Okay? They dismissed this. But philosophically, they understood the power of this belief in this idea that there was this supreme being. Many other people came to this same type of conclusion. But what they believed is that, no, we could communicate with God, but not directly. God is so different from us that, you can't have any direct communication with God. And then what they obviously did is they began to imagine, and this is where they begin to start thinking that God has some of the deficiencies of the creation. And they start to imagine that God is like a created thing, which actually contradicts their original premise. They end up contradicting themselves. But, for example, idol worshippers. Most intelligent idol worshippers don't actually claim that the idol itself that they are worshipping actually has any power. They believe that somehow these idols represent spirits or powers or beings that can be intermediaries or intercessors between them and God. And they give an example. They say, for example, look, if you want to go and see Tony Blair, yeah, I'm not saying this is exactly the example they give, but if you want to go and see Tony Blair, you don't just go up and say, hey, Tony, can I have a chat with you? So, like, oh my God, it's one of those Muslims. Run. Okay? No, they will say, no, you have to go through Tony's cronies. Yeah? You have to go through the cronies of Tony, right? If you want to get to him. So you have to go to those people who he knows. Or even you have to go through the cronies of the cronies. Or the cronies of the cronies of the cronies. Depending. Yeah? If you're really like just a nobody. But of course, if you're rich and middle class, you could probably get to see him straight away. If you have enough money, he might even come to visit you. Yeah? But for you ordinary people, Muslims, yeah, especially those veiled women, you could take your veil off, then maybe we'll talk to you. Yeah? Okay? No. You have to go through special channels. And they say, well, it's like that with God, you see. You can't just talk straight to God. You have to go through those people who are close to God. You have to go to the priest who will then talk to, this super sort of semi-God who will pass on the message bit by bit. You have to go through. So they imagine God is like a king or a prime minister or something, surrounded by all these cronies and these sort of demigods and these things. That's how you have to get to God. That's how they portray it. Okay? Of course, the problem with this is that immediately these people have presumed that God suffers from the limitations and the deficiencies of the human beings. Right? Because why does Tony need cronies? Can anyone tell me? Why does Tony need cronies? Because he's a human being. He's afraid of being assassinated. He's afraid of terrorists. He's also afraid. He's not afraid. He just simply doesn't have enough time to deal with the complaint of every single individual person, right? He has to eat his dinner. He has to spend time with Cherry and his family, right? He has to go on holiday, usually at the expense of some rich friend of his, Nothing wrong with that, actually. I don't think there's anything wrong. Personally, I think there's nothing wrong with that at all. How could I? My parents are always, helping me go on holiday and visit them and stuff like that. But anyway, that aside. So he has to have people. See, is this really worth me dealing with? If every single person wanted to personally complain to the Prime Minister about every single little problem that they had, would he be able to deal with that? Of course he wouldn't, because he's human. He has 24 hours in a day. He's limited. You see, but God is not limited like that. Allah, God, the Creator, who has created this whole universe, can hear the complaint of every single human being. And not only that, an incredible thing. If every single human being complained to God all at the same time, God could hear every voice of every human being, and God could give every one of them what they wanted, and that would be easy for God. Right? Now, how about the human beings? If you all start talking to me at the same time, could I understand what you're going on about? Could I? Could I? No, I can't. And the reason I can't is because I'm human. Let's think about what that means in respect to those people who pray to saints and prophets. There are even some Muslims who do this. And now we can see how people start to make others equal with Allah. So now let's say that I am praying to Saint Anthony, or some Muslim is praying to Abdul Qadir al-Jalani, or Prophet Muhammad, or Prophet Jesus, okay, or whatever, right? Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, alayhi salam. Are you telling me that, not just me by the way, let's just say that 1 million Muslims all at the same time are asking and calling upon the Prophet Muhammad, or 1 million Catholics all at the same time are calling upon Saint Anthony? Are you telling me that Saint Anthony can hear 1 million voices all at the same time? If you're telling me that he can, then actually you are not describing a human being anymore. You are saying that he has powers that are actually divine powers. You are now beginning to make that person equal with Allah, with God. Whether it's the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, or Prophet Isa, or Saint Anthony, or Abdul Qadir al-Jalani, if you first of all put aside the argument of whether the dead can even hear the living, okay, let's put that aside. Although I believe that the dead cannot hear the living. That's why it's called barzakh. Calling upon a dead person is like calling upon a brick. But let's put that aside. Let's say they can hear. Are you saying they can hear these multiple voices all at the same time? You're not really saying they're human anymore. And they could deal with all these prayers and all of these supplications? That's a divine attribute. And this is how people either they imagine that God, Allah, is limited. See, they've given to Allah limitations, and they've given to human beings exaggerations. This is how people start to make and worship things, and listen, if I pray to St. Anthony, don't I hope that he's going to hear me? Don't I trust that he's going to answer my prayers? Don't I put then faith and hope and trust, and I believe that he's going to give me what I want and what I need? Or if I pray to Prophet Muhammad or Jesus or whoever it may be, doesn't it therefore become a God, an object of worship? It does. Of course it does. And the Quran deals with this. Actually, there is something more foolish about idolatry. And the basic reason why it's foolish is because of simple common sense. Any human being who spends some time thinking about it would realize this is foolishness. And again, the Quran appeals to common sense. A beautiful story is the story of Abraham. See, Prophet Abraham, he is well known for smashing idols. Bit of a radical. Can you imagine that these days? Prophet Abraham tried so hard to convince his people. You see, from a young age, he was brought up, his father's house. He was watching, his father used to make idols. So he used to see his dad get a piece of wood, chop up the piece of wood and make an idol, use the chippings to heat the fire to cook their food, and then this idol which he made, he would see his dad give it to the people, and the people would pray to it. And he realized, this is the same thing we were cooking our dinner with. Right? And now the people are worshipping it. He's brought up realizing that what is this? And then he noticed the people, they're worshipping the sun, the moon, and the stars. But he's looking, he's seeing, well, the stars are there, and then the moon comes out and outshines the stars. And then the sun comes, and that outshines everything. And then the sun sets. And why are we worshipping things that obviously are controlled by something else? It doesn't make any sense to worship them. They don't have the power. They're under the power of something else. And he realizes that these things are not true gods. They shouldn't be worshipped. Why should we worship these things that come and go and temporary? Because if they can go, that means they can let us down. The time we really need them is when they're not there. So why should I worship that? Why should I put my faith in that? Why should I put my trust in that? So one day he's determined. He says to his people, I'm going to show you. I'm going to prove to you that your worship of the idols is false. So when his people have gone, it's their festivity, and it's their religious festival, he doesn't want to participate in it because he doesn't want to be involved in their idol worship at all. So he says to them, I'm sick. He says, I'm sick. Meaning, actually, he was sick of what they're doing. So when they were doing this, he went into the temple and he smashed all the idols except the chief idol. And he took his axe and he hung it round the neck of the chief idol. Now when the people came back, they were outraged. Who has committed this blasphemy? Who has done this to our gods? And some people said, you remember that young man Abraham? He was saying that he was going to prove our idols are false. So the king, he brings Abraham in front of the people. He says, Abraham, did you do this to our gods? So Abraham says, ask the big one. Ask him. So then they look at each other and they say to Abraham, Abraham, you know that our gods can't talk to us. He says, why do you worship something that can bring you no benefit and no harm? And this idol can't even protect itself. How is it going to protect you? Isn't that common sense? Isn't that just common sense? Isn't it our common everyday experience? You who are students here in Buckinghamshire and Chiltern University, when you want to study in a university, now these days you need loans, right? You need money because you have to pay for some of it, right? Okay? Where did you go to get the money? Did you go to the guy begging on the street, sitting outside the railway station? Excuse me, mate, I need to go to university. Could I borrow a couple of £1,000? Did you do that? Did anyone do that? I don't think so. Because if this guy can't help himself, how is he going to help you?